I'm John Batchelor. Larry Kudlow, CNBC, and Kudlow Radio on the weekend. Larry, you and I are 100% of the Republican Party for immigration reform. Have you counted anybody else the last week since we talked? I have picked up no one.
There are a few others like Steve Moore, but not at the moment, with 60,000 little kids coming across the border illegally, it's a pretty small crowd.
Right, and they've all got paper bags on their head because you don't know who they are. All right. We welcome John Cochrane of the Hoover Institution, who has a piece up on a new publication. I urge all of you to look at this. This is at hoover.org. Hoover Institution. It's free, and it's called Peregrine. It's a new policy aggregation of essays. John is writing one of them tonight about immigrants, but there'll be other voices published every 2 months ago. So later on this evening, I'll speak to another man who's co-editing this with Ed Lazier, a friend of ours, Larry, Timothy Kane. And Peregrine is looking at all of the aspects of immigration reform that get left out in the food fight in Washington. On one side, you have people talking about amnesty, and there's a lot of booing. On the other side, you have people talking about deportation, and there's a lot of booing. What's in between? Professor, a very good evening to you. Thank you for this. You ask the provocative question in your essay, what is the optimal number of immigrants to the U.S.? Is this a formula that you economists have secret? Good evening to you, John.
Good evening. I think it's a bad question. The right question is, on what terms do immigrants come into the U.S.? We don't try to decide what the optimal number of tomatoes to be imported into the U.S. is. We decide what the rules are. And I think we should have vastly more open immigration. The number people who want to come here and work, doctors, lawyers, entrepreneurs, computer programmers, and gardeners, auto mechanics, home builders, people who want to come start their lives in a free country and work, we should let them in.
Really good soccer players. We could use a couple of those, too.
Well, we seem to manage that, right.
John, this is an interesting point. In Canada, for example, you have qualifications issues and also financial issues to get in legally. So are you suggesting for the USA, instead of family members, which is one important criteria, we shift this around and look at skill sets, both high skill sets and lower skill sets? In other words, maybe we have a list. We have a list of all the people that we need, all the professions and skills that we need, and that's how we do immigration.
Yeah, I'm actually more radical than that. I mean, what are we doing keeping people out? If you believe in free trade of goods going back and forth, you believe fundamentally in free people. I think fundamentally, you and I think that if we wanted to go to France, we should be able to. Why do we have the right to keep people out of the U.S.? Now, let's be reasonable. Let's build it up from that. Certainly people who want to come here, who want to contribute, want to work, want to join our society, pay our taxes, pay our Social Security, pay down our government debt, why in the world are we keeping them out?
And the people that have lived here, now let's shift the illegals, many of whom have been here, 15, 20 years or more. I mean, they're part of the social fabric of where they live.
Their families, their children are at school. They live in the parts of the country where they need workers. Yeah.
They own houses, they own cars, they do your gardens, they clean your floors.
We're speaking to them right now, North Wichita, Kansas, because we're broadcasting on KNSS. There are lots of Mexican immigrants there with families. Some have papers, some don't. They're vital parts of the community.
So anybody who says we should give them legal status, John, I'm not even talking citizenship. I'm just saying legal status gets, drowned out by a cacophony of amnesty calls from everybody, in the restrictionist camp. How do you get around that?
Well, you sort of talk common sense. Let's start with just the outrage of what we've done to these people. We have people who've lived their entire lives in the U.S. without papers. We are outraged when Palestinians in Saudi Arabia can't get citizenship and are treated as second-class citizens. We're doing that here. People scurry around their whole lives, scared of being stopped by the cops, can't take a plane, because they don't have legal status. So they are part of our society, and I don't see why we shouldn't let them be part of their society. Now they're here because we have horrible laws, and let's see. I'm glad that there is some respect for the law left in the U.S., but let's face it, these were horrible laws, and you gotta solve that problem. Now, if you start letting people, the big complaint is, well, your amnesty for people who didn't wait in line. Now, people, it is literally impossible to come to the United States unless you have family members or some deal. So the idea of people should wait in line is just not realistic. But if we let in people who want to come, then there's no issue of giving legal status to people who are already here.
You talk about assets, you talk about a visible business or asset income within the first 6 months. A case study. This is Tulsa, Oklahoma. He's a barber out of Mexico. He has a family there. And when he came to the United States, he founded a salon. I reported on this last week, so I have the facts in my mind. He founded the salon. He was doing very well. A rival across the street or someone he knew threatened to turn him in because he was doing too good of a business. And he couldn't get a license because he doesn't have legal papers. Now he works as a roofer. He's happy to support his family, but every morning when he gets up to drive with his teenage son to the roofing, he's very careful when he comes to the lights, and he sweats a lot when police drive by because he knows he'll be deported if he's picked up. It's whimsical. It's like that.
It's a good example, too, of a classic one. We're using regulation for people to stop competition, which is, of course, in the consumer's interest. And notice, by the way, the incoherence here. We say we're worried about people coming in because they'll be on social programs and won't contribute. Then what do we let in? Family members, we let them in. Now, they're the most likely to be using social programs and not contribute. What we don't let in is people who want to come in and start jobs, start businesses, work, pay taxes, and so forth.
Well, another point is they're going to immigrants will lower wages and cost Americans jobs. Now, John, that is a zero-sum analysis that I can't stand, because why can't you assume that immigrants will come into the USA and create new businesses that will create plenty of new jobs that will actually increase wages, which I might add has basically been the history of the United States for these past 250 years.
Yeah, we didn't come and steal jobs from the Indians. I mean, we stole a lot of other things, but there wasn't a finite supply of jobs, and we came and stole them from them. And that's exactly right. Also, even if it would work, even if that were the case, it wouldn't work, because if you keep the people from coming here, then the businesses will go there. So it's not going to even work in the first place. And then, even if that were not true, is really the position of the United States in the world to impoverish Mexican migrants. It's just a straight transfer. Take their money and give it to our citizens. I don't think that's...
You write, if you've been here X number of years, a number to be determined, have a job, stayed out of trouble, you should get to stay. That seems very straightforward filter. Has anybody ever tried that anywhere, John?
Oh, sure. I mean, as you mentioned, Canada lets in high-value immigrants.
And it works for Canada. Is it not true?
Our clocks.
Is it not true that a country that grows, that has immigrants, that have families coming in, that country prospers? Isn't that true, John?
Yeah, because immigrants, despite all the rhetoric, people don't leave their countries in order to go be poor. Immigrants are typically entrepreneurial, hardworking people. The reason they come is to start a new life and work hard. That's, you and all of us are immigrants. Roosevelt once started a speech, my fellow immigrants, we all are the children of immigrants. And they came here in order to work hard and build things.
So the question is, I guess it's a tactical question. There's low-hanging fruit, at least I think there is, namely, smart kids who went to school here, we should let them stay. And people with, technology skills, engineering, science, math, so-called STEM workers, we should let them stay. All right, that's like the lowest hanging fruit.
Throw in barbers, Larry.
I would.
Let's start with the easy stuff, absolutely.
But I would start with the easy stuff. In other words, somehow this logjam has to be broken, and I think the first immigration bill that passes will break the logjam, and then we can get down. And then, John, I like your list. I mean, I think the whole idea of barbers and roofers, et cetera, et cetera. Let's say to anybody who has a history of work in Mexico might qualify for a visa into the United States.
Yeah, or just, an asset test. Let there be some way. What we do now is we say, you may not come. There's no way you can come. But sure, post a $5,000. If we're worried about people ending up on welfare, post a bond at the border, and if you get arrested or you end up on welfare, we'll send you back. But if you don't, welcome to the U.S.
The million a year that are legally immigrating, they're mostly family members, and we're not getting skill sets or people who are family formers. Family formation is the way communities grow, and that's not what we're attracting. We're providing to fill up families that become either overburdened or can be fractured. Is that correct, John?
Yeah, but it is compassionate.
I understand.
But it's not compassionate to the person who wants to come here and work. It's not self-interested.
But it does come up to $1 million a year. Why not $3 million a year if we have asset tests? Does anybody say no to $3 million a year with an asset test?
Why not $5 million a year? I don't think we should talk about the number. We should talk about the rules, and then let the number adjust itself. You know, if the rule is anybody who comes and make sure you have a job and make sure you buy health insurance and stay out of trouble, then the numbers can be anything they want, because we know we've set the rules right and these people are coming to contribute to the U.S.
Larry, commonsensical to you, do you perceive that the resentment of immigration is because a job will be taken away? Do the people who think that understand that new workers create opportunities and prosperity for everyone?
No, they do not understand that. I mean, I think the two biggest arguments by the restrictionists is, number one, don't break the law, even though, as Jeb Bush pointed out, illegal immigration is not a felony, it's a misdemeanor. But number one, don't break the law. And number two, they're going to cost us jobs and wages. Those are the two primary arguments. And now you've got this utter chaos on the border, right, with whatever, these 60,000 kids, whatever the number is.
And it's going to get worse, Larry.
Right, it's going to get worse. And as it gets worse, the domestic politics of immigration reform get worse. And that's my biggest concern.
Well, like you said, let's start with the low-hanging fruit. You know, I teach at a business school, and it's so sad. Kids come from China, India, all over the world. They come, they get a great education at the University of Chicago Business School, and then they have to go home because they can't get visas to stay here and work. And then they start those business in India, and then we whine about all the exports from India and China that we're buying.
See, they're creating capital. They're going to create the businesses and the inventions and the equipment that in turn will develop a huge demand for labor, which in turn will raise wages over a period of time. That's the natural progression, what you've just outlined. That's why we should keep them here. But the restrictionists won't even buy into that.
And let's remember, immigrants are also consumers. So, we have a housing bust. Well, everybody who comes here needs a house. Wouldn't that be nice for the housing sector to be able to sell new houses?
John H. Cochrane is threatening to become the third member of the pro-immigration Republican Party set here. He's a senior fellow at the Hoover Institution. He's AQR Capital Management Distinguished Service Professor of Finance at the University of Chicago's Booth School of Business. He's also a research associate of the National Bureau of Economic Research, an adjunct scholar of the Cato Institute. Larry Kudlow of CNBC and Kudlow Radio on the Weekend. I'm John Batchelor.